Happy New Year, and this is the first podcast of 2025. And after a long 2 weeks of holidays and things that have been going on, it's great to be back in the seat. No matter when you see this episode, I think it's going to be very relevant for you. Welcome to Crap Now What, the 2025 season version of what we bring to you are slices of life, things that are relevant and timely, as well as weaving together people's positions in life, where you might be at this particular time, some of the emotions that go along with it, because I firmly believe that decisions that are made on financials are also very much driven with the emotions of day-to-day life. Whether you are someone who is struggling to make it paycheck by paycheck, to someone who is an entrepreneur, to someone that's actually maybe just recently come into money. There's a lot of different places where the things that we bring at Crap Now What are relevant. Along those lines too, these are my opinions. These are thoughts that I have run into and have considered. They are based most of the times on situations and people that I've talked to throughout the week, as well as what's going on the calendar. I am in the financial services world. I own Blazing Star Wealth Strategies. It is a very unique company. It is a woman-owned company, and we are nationwide. And that's also very important because the things that we bring to you are very different as well. And they are opinions, though. And so if you are interested, of course, in talking more with myself or my team, that's always an open invitation. But what I do make sure to ask you to do, if you decide that you want to fact check, learn some more, or do your own independent research, make sure that you are talking to someone in the industry. Make sure you're getting somebody to look at your independent position so that they are giving you relevant information based on your situation. That said, let's dive into today's topic, because one of the things that's very important, I believe, is for people to continue to be as informed as possible about different situations and different options within those situations. And today we're going to talk about something that is very much going to be on people's minds in the next weeks and months, are taxes. The tax returns and the taxes of 2024. And this is a very interesting topic because in about a week or so, many people are going to start thinking about how fast can they get their tax refund? How fast can we prepare our own individual taxes? How are we going to do this? Because by the end of the month, by the end of January 31st, every company is required to have sent in and completed statements and get those to you so that you can start preparing your taxes. We're already hearing commercials for the loans against your upcoming refund, and that's relevant for some people to get the cash in their hand as much as possible. Now, I am within the financial services industry. I live in a very unique specialty. It is one that is not highly well known, and sometimes the spirit of the things that I'm talking about and sharing as concepts are not easily understood in this format. The longer format of the Crap Now What podcast helps to magnify this. But if you look at us from the shorter side of the world, when a TikTok video or an Instagram reel or one of our YouTube shorts, those concepts are cut out by my editing team. Caleb does an amazing job of doing that and helping to make these relevant messages and put those out there for you to see. But what we do is not easily understood. And that's why the opportunity to send in a message, to reach out to our company, Go Blazing Star on our website, is always an open invitation for you. That said, I'm going to talk a lot about the traditional way that the financial services industry goes about taxes and helping people with their taxes. And I'm going to rub some people wrong, probably. And I'm doing this intentionally. If you've happened to watch one of my previous podcasts, if you happen to be one of my current customers or clients that I've worked with, if you're somebody that you've known me for quite some time, I am very passionate about making sure that your needs are met with ears that were willing to listen and to help to have you enjoy more of your dollars. Whether you have, like I said earlier at the top of this, if your budget is really tight or if you have quite a bit to be able to work with, either way, we have all one thing in common. We would love to have the opportunity to enjoy more of our own money rather than giving it to the government. And there is no time like the present in this next tax season where that's even more relevant. Many people come into the new year with debt from the last year. Sometimes it's a look back on maybe medical issues that have happened, maybe unexpected situations that have happened in your household, or it could very well be very simple as extra credit card debt because of all the extra high inflation. We've talked about several of these different things in 2024, and we come through the holidays. People may or may not be moving. People may or may not be in a situation where they've gotten a bonus. I see more and more companies being a little bit tighter on the bonuses at the end of the year. So we could be facing a lot of credit card debt. So that need for that refund is even more relevant. So in today's episode of Crap Now, what we're going to talk about, crap, are you as prepared as you can be to get the most out of your tax return and your 2024 as you possibly can? And we're going to do this in the spirit of being as informed as possible. And like I said, I'm going to rub a few people wrong a little bit. And it's kind of a brave position for me to come out into. And maybe it's the fact that I'm cozied up on a blizzardy afternoon and it's, bitter cold and the winds are blowing and there's nothing else better to do. Or it's just the fact that I think that sometimes a person just has to get up and stand up for what is really available and be strong enough to start sharing those concepts rather than dancing around. In the traditional financial world, I'm going to put a couple of different hands out here, both of my hands out here for the two different groups that I'm referring to. There's financial advisors. Financial advisors tend to be a little bit more traditional. People go see financial planners a lot of times to start looking at building their legacy, figuring out what their retirement's going to be. If somebody has done this and they've done it kind of the right way, maybe they did it, once they became parents or partnered up with somebody, became parents, started to put away a certain amount of money, started to put away their plans. Maybe they know they've inherited, maybe they have inherited from their family, and they're working with someone to make sure that when they get closer to retirement or they're in retirement, that they are feeling as comfortable as possible. A financial planner is amazing. I am partners with a lot of financial planners, so I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I don't want anybody to get angry with me. But I also invite more and more financial planners, and this is a really good call out that I really want to put out there. I invite financial planners, financial advisors to partner with me to be able to take some more cutting edge, some more new and different, maybe, and they're really not different and they've been around for a while, but not as well known, but ideas that help reduce people's taxes that are not traditional. And most financial advisors, and this is where I hope somebody calls me up, because I'll record the calling or a call, or I'll come back on this podcast and tell you what they said. I'm not trying to take business away from a financial planner or financial advisor. As a matter of fact, when I work with clients and we start to move their money, if they have a financial planner or an advisor, they're a part of the process. So I'm not trying to replace this person. But the reason why we partner up together is because the traditional financial planner, financial advisor is very knowledgeable, and they usually have a securities license. If you have a securities license, a lot of times you have a lot of things that you have to stay relevant on, continuing education. There's so many different things with the securities license as far as confidentiality and different things along those lines, that it's a lot of work just to be a financial advisor, financial planner. And if you're doing trades for people on a day-to-day basis, and you're also meeting with clients and you're putting together a plan and you're talking to somebody's CPA, or if you decided that you wanted to be a part of a conversation that your client is having with a financial or wealth strategist like I am, then there's another meeting. So many financial advisors, financial planners, using that as a joint term there, do not have the time to necessarily learn another skill and add it to their portfolio. And that's fair. There's a point in there where a person should choose their lane. And I've talked about this a little bit, but maybe not so directly. The same thing with a CPA. A CPA, if somebody has gone to the point where they have somebody that's helping them prepare their taxes, they could be working with a CPA. They could also be working with a tax preparer. Oh, I said that wrong. But they may be actually working with someone who specializes in preparing taxes. There is an interesting question that comes up. I am working with a lady right now, a very smart lady. My goodness gracious, she's 77 years old. She has done her own independent, self-directed funds, including self-directed 401k that she had through her former business, and then also her own self-directed brokerage account. So we're talking about a woman who's very smart. Like I said, 77 years old. She's at a point right now where she is making a choice between which bucket does she draw from next. She's had in her retirement, clearly at 77, she's been retired for a little while, and she's been very active. If you look at her Social Security and the fact that now that she's 77, she's taking RMDs, and then she's also been drawing down from, she had some cash. Cash was a good place to draw down from, because if she went to her 401k bucket, that causes a taxable event. If she goes to her brokerage account, then it's a difference between, do I sell off Apple or do I hold on to it? And so she's continued to manage a significant amount of money in both of those buckets and used cash because cash was available. And she's done, like I said, an extremely good job, but now she's looking for direction as to which of those buckets that she should go to. And the reason I bring this up is because she works with someone who prepares taxes. This is a tax preparer. This brings up not only the fact that there's value in tracking what this woman is going to do for her choices because she's come to the right place for this type of discussion and to minimize her taxes and continue to build that legacy that she has. But there is a difference between someone who is a tax preparer, and then there's also a difference between that and a CPA. So let's define that right now. Many people go one of three directions for having their taxes prepared and completed and filed. One is independently, getting online, fill in the blanks in the buckets, and get it sent on in. Another way is to go to a tax preparation service or maybe someone that you know who prepares taxes. And that's usually someone who fills in a lot of those blanks and buckets and actually thinks of questions to help you to figure out maybe some other opportunities. And then there's your CPA. A CPA is a professional. They don't always actually prepare the taxes themselves. They might review it before it's filed because they're reviewing it with you one-on-one as a client, because there could be some very important questions, or very important decisions that are actually made as to how to reduce the taxable income for that filing year and what moves can still be made. Typically, a CPA is also involved in the planning throughout the whole year, and a CPA also is somebody that can act as an agent for a client that is being audited either at the state or the federal level. A tax preparer can be very good, and a CPA and a financial advisor, and in some cases a financial advisor helps to reduce taxes or works with the CPA. So sometimes these things are interchangeable. Traditionally, though, everybody still kind of works within their lane, and many people who prepare taxes are not necessarily the ones who know about the ins and outs of how to save and how to use tax codes to a person's advantage. A CPA is more likely to be that person. They don't always, though, deviate from their main tools in the toolbox. And that's where I'm going to maybe annoy someone else, is because I'm going to sit here and say that CPAs will tend to stick with what they know as being the best ways to reduce taxable income. That's why some of the people that our company works with come to us and say, how come my financial advisor or my CPA has never talked to me about it? Because they just have not had the opportunity to study or learn, or they're not interested in it because they're plenty busy as it is. And that's completely understandable. So back to the 77-year-old woman that I'm working with, she says to me, I need to have some advice, and I don't want to start. If she starts to take from her tax deferred accounts, then it becomes a taxable event. And yes, she can do the simple math. If she needs another $100,000 a year to live off of, and it takes 135 to pull out to have 100, allowing for taxes based on everything that she has, yes, she is able and capable of doing it. But she's telling me, and very rightfully so, I believe that when I've asked the person who prepares my taxes if there's any other ideas of what I can do, and she says no, then I believe in my heart of hearts and my gut and all the research that I've done is that there are other ways that I can reduce my taxes. This is my client that's talking to me. I believe, Shaunelle, I believe that countless people in our country, all 50 states, big country, I believe every day of the week and many people over the next few months are either going to be filling out their own tax return and be wondering, gosh, would it have been worth it for me to take it to someone else? Or two, going to someone else and still wondering if they were getting, the best service and the best ideas possible, or if they just paid somebody to put the numbers in. I'm not being sarcastic, but we know some people have that experience when they go and have somebody else prepare their tax return. Or they might even be asking themselves, and I read this on Reddit, a number of people saying, at what point is it worth it for me where I'm going to save enough to pay for somebody else to do my taxes? That's an amazing question. And that's especially the kinds of things that when a person feels those feelings that maybe there's something better, then that probably means you owe it to yourself to look around and start asking more questions. Okay, so in the spirit of the tax season, we're going to talk about some of the most common tax plays that are pulled out at this time of year to reduce taxable income so that a person can save on taxes. Now, most people are very driven, of course, to give as little as possible to the government. And you are not responsible to give the government more than what you're supposed to. You don't have to overpay. You don't have to overspend. So you should be able to use the tax codes and the opportunities to save for your advantage. because most people are either looking for a refund, or if you happen to be an entrepreneur or small business owner, you might have been sending in quarterly, etc., depending on the strength of your company or companies, etc. But you are also very motivated to work with a professional, typically a CPA, who is helping you to reduce your taxable income. Either way, we're still trying not to give as much to the government or any more than the government requires us to give. Where I step in, it goes in actually probably more future planning than 2024. I can't necessarily come in and scoop you up with other ideas that are going to save you in 2024, but I can help people to make some quick moves, at least by the end of the tax year. But what I can help you with right now is calling some things out that you should be aware of that are typical and talk about them now, and then leave it open for you to start looking at 2025 as a new beginning, whether no matter where you're at in that planning. I'm just going to say it. It doesn't matter if you're what if you have a finite, limited retirement plan, or if you are still out there and you have several sources of income. I'm going to say that you can be helped in the future to reduce your taxable income in a more permanent way rather than these quick fixes. But these are good ones. But there's also give and take. So, what a CPA will do, or someone else who knows something about taxes, or you might try to do it yourself as you fill out your own tax return. And I say try because you're filling in maybe questions and different things along those lines, or maybe Googling something to see if maybe there's another thing that you could possibly do. The thing about taxes is, and when I say this, if you're someone who self-prepares, or if you are working with someone who is more of a traditional tax preparation service, they may not be necessarily having their eye on the fact that suddenly maybe your income is up, or you've jumped up to a different tax bracket and some different things like that. I counsel people all the time who are already on Social Security and are not really realizing that when they're filling out their income tax forms, it doesn't come out with big red lights and sirens going off that suddenly a person is paying taxes on their Social Security. That happens. That happens. So when I did an interview last week with a financial network, and it's actually been posted up on the YouTube and all the other places that you can find the podcasts. My theme is be curious. I get it. Gosh darn it, I'm in my 50s myself. I'm looking at retirement, but I'm also looking at planning on walking this earth for another 30 years, which means I got to stay on top of things. And it can get tiring for many people. People like myself, we grew up with the first cell phones that came in a bag, computers that you had to remember it was just a black screen and you had to hit something like, I don't even remember, DOS to get a little menu to come up. And technology and keeping up with things can be very daunting and it can be tiring. But we have to take energy into this chapter. If you're starting to face retirement, you need to start taking energy and saving energy to put it into being curious. Being curious. So now I'm going to throw some shade on some typical tax strategies that are implemented to reduce income immediately and point them out as to why they're not necessarily the best idea overall. The first one, especially if you are someone that already has a 401k or something along those lines, and or I should say, or if you happen to be a small business owner and you don't have one started, one of the first tricks to reducing your taxable income is to max fund a 401k, 403b, or whatever kind of IRA type tax deferred plan that you have. If you're a small business owner and you're working with a CPA and they say, okay, well, you've made a heck of a lot of money this year, and now I'm going to recommend that you open up a SEP, which is a simplified employee pension plan, which is what small business owners can open for themselves in order to have a 401k. It's another tax deferred instrument. Not horrible. Not horrible if your CPA or somebody's looking at you across the desk and saying, you should do this to reduce your taxes because this will drop you from this bracket to this bracket and save you this much. Plus you'll have this. Well, the plus you have this is also still tax deferred. And tax deferred means that eventually the government's going to come and collect it. They're either going to collect it when you decide to start cashing it in and living off of it. They're going to take it as ordinary income. You're going to pay taxes as ordinary income. So if you're in a 22% tax bracket, a 28% tax bracket, a 35% tax bracket, that's how you get taxed. What we were told when we signed up for these when we were kids coming out of college, that this was going to be something that was going to be wonderful because we wouldn't be making money when we retire like we did when we were working. And now you will not have to pay as much in taxes. Well, I haven't found very many people who have figured out how to live on a lot less than what they've been living on this whole time. And so they've been continuing wanting to work. Most people are either working part-time to supplement their Social Security or are looking to draw down on those 401k retirement plans at a higher percentage so they don't have to change their lifestyle. We don't have to get into the fact that inflation does a little bit with that, but people don't like to change their lifestyle that much. So something tax deferred might be fine for 2024, not so necessarily great for the future. Another fast one is to possibly open up an HSA account. HSA accounts have a nice play in them. They're especially good for people with a high deductible healthcare plan to be able to write off some income, put it in the HSA, be able to use it. It's still a tax deferred account. It can be used on medical expenses, but also it can be a tax deferred instrument, a way for, especially for a small business owner who's getting their taxes prepared to quickly open up an HSA and reduce their taxable income. Roth conversions. Now I have a love-hate relationship with Roth conversions. I love them in a way because, yeah, I sit here day in and day out talking to people about reducing their taxable income. You get into a Roth, you're earning tax-free, you pull it out tax-free. You know, there's some good things there. So I at first blush, I would be a hypocrite to be critical of a Roth conversion. I will bring you the math though, and we will do a tutorial in an upcoming episode of a Roth conversion compared to the tax deferred account that it came from, and then also how funds can be grown differently, because having income that's tax-free is amazing, but having funds and places and moves that you have made to reduce your overall tax income is better in the long run, and you are having the opportunity to enjoy money in your lifetime for a longer period of time. For example, a Roth conversion of $100,000, let's say somebody's amassed $100,000 and they're in a position where their financial planner is telling them that, or possibly CPA being involved in that as well because of the tax side of it, is saying, okay, we should convert $100,000 of your tax deferred accounts over into a Roth. What that means is you're paying taxes that year. So a Roth conversion is not for the faint of heart, because taking those taxes in, for example, 2024 in a certain tax year means that somebody has to have their eye on the ball as to making sure that you know what tax bracket you're jumping into for that conversion, because it means you're paying your taxes up front, probably jumps up to a different tax bracket, or where do you cut it off so that you don't jump into the next tax bracket? So you've got to have some planners be involved in this. That's why I say it's not for the faint of heart. You have to have some planning going into it, or be extremely good and knowledgeable at these things on your own. For example, if you take 100,000 and that jumps you into a 28% tax bracket, that leaves $72,000 going into the Roth. So that's a hit. It doesn't just miraculously go across. There's a tax hit. If you do 8% earnings year over year on that 72%, or 72,000, excuse me, if you do an 8% earning on $72,000, it takes almost 4.5 years to get back up to that 100,000. Yes, it's almost, it's not exactly smoke and mirrors or whatever, or this or that. You're moving from one type of asset to another. You know what you're doing, but there are still tax implications. Uncle Sam, as they say, does get their cut, but then after it gets over there, it's all yours and you can do whatever you want. And yes, if you've done quite a bit of Roth converting, if you do not make too much money to do a Roth, which by the way, there's that limit too, then it can be a good play for some people. It's not for everyone. And it also needs to have people that know what they're doing. And it can eventually give some tax-free money. And if you're really living off of it, it, in effect, in a way, depending on the math, reduces taxable income, depending. Okay, another tax-deferred play is a 529 plan. A 529 plan is typically intended for college funds for a child or a grandchild, depending on how a person's doing financially. I know and have met a lot of clients who have done that legacy and that gift already to their grandchildren too. 529s are tax deferred. They work on one end to reduce immediate taxable income. It does come with its own restrictions on how the funds can be used. I've talked about that on this podcast as well, that there are other ways to accumulate funds that don't have the requirements of a 529 plan. If the child does not go to college, now there are some conversions over to Roth that can be done. So there's been a little bit of letting the hands free a little bit on these 529 plans so that we're not so tied to a certain plan of process of how they're used, but they are still more limited and requiring that there's a college that's attended. And if the one person doesn't use the funds or whatever, you can't just pull them out without penalties or just use them for whatever. So there's a lot of things to consider. And I've come on here and I've talked about this on the podcast and shared that those are things that they're nice, they're wonderful. My goodness gracious, who would ever say no to a parent who really cared about making sure that there was money? If it's a parent, I would talk about it maybe from different directions. But my goodness, I would never say, and I've never turned to one of my clients and said, you shouldn't have started a 529 for your grandkid. No, I would never do that. What a kind thing to do. I would also, though, typically the people I talk to have done all those things are also still looking for more things that they can do. So that's where we grab the ball and we run with it. Okay, so the spirit of this podcast, I shared with you 5 pretty typical. I think I did miss one here. I'll back up real quick. Another kind of less used. I've seen it. I've been in rooms where we've talked to clients when I've partnered with a financial advisor who's already started a charitable fund, charitable contribution. They've worked with the CPA to make sure that there was a charitable fund. Now this is high level accounting. Maybe the accountants and the CPAs or some other financial advisors would laugh at me for saying it this way. But there are levels of starting something that's charitable that can be done and funded in 1 year, and then the funds go out over a period of time. So the tax savings is assigned to 1 year, and then it doesn't change the fact that the person is giving. If they're typical of doing giving, it changes the way they're giving so that the impact of the taxes are reduced, maybe to offset a time when some Roth conversions are going on. So there are a lot of nuances, and I know I'm still rubbing some people, though, the wrong way, because I'm sitting here saying these are great, they're fine for now, but in a lot of ways, they're where I say that I'm rubbing potentially other people within the financial services industry, financial advisors or planners, as I've said, or CPAs, is that many of these moves are kicking the can down the road. We're going to take something now, just like they said when they said start your 401k. We're kicking the missing my punchline here. We are kicking the taxes down the road. So we're kicking that can, like I said, and that can says taxes on it, and we're kicking it down the road. That's why I'm not as big of a fan of those types of things in the long run. They're fine if you need something immediate, but you should also be having conversations, just like the client that I was talking about earlier who says, I know that there are other things. What I want you to do, and that's going to be my theme for 2025, at least right now, is to be curious. Be curious. Find the energy to continue to be curious. Give yourself that gift of curiosity. If you start to read about what's going on in our world, read about some of the projections about the economy. There are people who are writing articles out there that are comparing the economy and the switch and the movement with the new president and the fact that the party, the Republican Party in particular, is also going to have control over the houses and the Senate and different things along those lines, that they're comparing it to 1980. And there are some feelings out there. And if you watch the stock market go up right after the election, that was because the country had answers, not necessarily the answers and who it was and all this incoming, this and that, but the fact that the fact that the elections were over with and there was no more wondering, and there's that in some ways a sense of relief, because there was a pretty common feeling that unfortunately our current president he's going to be retiring, and that's appropriate. And so there was a lot of relief that the future was there, not necessarily who it was. There's a lot of people that were angry too. So I'm not going to get into the politics. Where I'm going with this is that be curious. Read about what's going on in the market. Start making decisions. Talk to people who know about different things and what the effect is. But there's also almost a near amount of articles and different opinions that are out there and editorial about some of the things that have been going on around us. We've already had some homeland terrorism, and we're just in the first few days of 2025. That's going to do some things to people to make them feel uncomfortable, uneasy, unrest. That will do things to the economy. And we all know that. So, also in the spirit of working together and being together and the being curious is that go ahead and give yourself maybe uh, even if it's a half an hour a week, or one favorite show, or start following a couple of different articles online, maybe watch videos. Sometimes if you go into the video side of things, though, you owe it to yourself to kind of go back and forth and try to listen to both sides. So it could be a rabbit hole, as they say, but be curious on everything. And I want you to be curious about these closing items as well, not just the stock market and the economy and what's going to be going on with the upcoming season here with a new president, and also with the fear that's kind of been going on with some of the terrorism that's around. But also look at this from, what can you do with your own dollars? What can you do to make sure that you have as much control over your own future? Your future in retirement, your future, whether it's your family and your legacy. Because there are ways, just as I threw some shade towards the traditional ways, I'm going to put some light on some things that are out there, that they're not a secret, and they are good things. And I don't tell you it's just one thing, because if you're really getting involved into the opportunities that you have, it's typically very similar to having a financial planner work with a CPA to put together a plan, having one thing move to another. It's moving things from one place to another in the spirit of reducing the tax bracket. We're not necessarily talking about a quick reduce taxes immediately. It can start to reduce within the first year, but it also is a reduction of the taxable income. It's a reducing of the tax bracket. Many of the people that follow these types of opportunities reduce their taxes down to 10%. 10%. A 22% tax bracket is what? A household that's close to 100,000. It depends on how you count it. 22%, 28, those are not unusual. 22, 24, 28, the people that I work with, those are typical for people. When we can move taxes down to as low as 10%, that's amazing. In some cases, if a person has certain qualifications, it could go even lower than that. But we can help people that have even 150,000 in their retirement. That's not a lot and won't last long. But if a person can have that last and double it and have it last longer, that much longer than it would have if they hadn't met us and my team and the people that I work with, these are people who have tried and true things that they have done for over 20 years. So if you could move your money, including have the opportunity to move tax deferred accounts as you go into retirement, if you've left an employer and those funds are available to start moving now, if you could move your tax deferred 401k, IRA, SEP, whatever version, 457, 403b, any of those tax deferred accounts, they call them qualified accounts. If you could start moving those dollars into a place where it never lost again, it's protected from market downturn, would you do it? Would you do it if it made the difference between earning 8% to 14%? I'm not giving quotes, no guarantees on those numbers. I'm saying can move the needle that much depending on a lot of things, amount of money, the time, everything else. So I'm not saying that that's a guarantee by any means. But if you take out the negative side and only have the upside, would you do it? Would you do it if you had a potential, at least for part of it, if not all of it, as you start to move this money where it's protected from the downturns? And we know the stock market goes up and down. I just gave you some reasons why it does it. If you could have some uncapped growth as part of that, would you do it? If you could have the upside and it's uncapped, that you could get all of it on the upside, or at least a large percentage of it, depending on how it's allocated, would you do it? Would you do it if it meant that you had a steady income stream that's untaxed? I'm not talking about a Roth in this example, but a steady untaxed income, regular income for life. Not just until the funds run out of that Roth. Roth eventually runs out of funds. They're designed to do that. It's finite at the beginning. It grows a little bit more, but it drains at whatever percentage you take it out. If you could do it where you have untaxed income for the rest of your life, would you do it? Would you do it if you were in a position to take advantage of leveraging your 401k or your qualified plan at a place where you could use other people's money so that when it comes to the tax portion and paying the taxes, that there's already money in that bucket to pay the taxes and you don't have to feel the pain of that? It's done automatically and your funds are still growing while it goes. Would you want to be curious about that? You should be. You should be. And if you have tax money, and if you have retirement dollars in a 401k, and you would love to see how you could move those dollars and have a stream and have those taxes that are paid already taken care of, no worries, would you be curious? I sure as heck hope you would be, because you should be. If instead of an immense large tax bill for your children and potentially your grandchildren, whoever is going to benefit and whoever you're passing on your legacy to, and a legacy can be $50,000, it could be $5,000, it could be $500,000, it could be $5 million. If you could make moves to enjoy your money as much as possible while you're still on this side of the ground, so to speak, and then the money moves to your family and your beneficiaries, or if you're involved in your church or someone else that you want to gift it to, if it could go there without paying high state, federal inheritance taxes, would you do it? Instead of having your 401k that you saved up go on to your beneficiaries and they have 65% of it, $100,000, let's say there's $100,000 still left in that 401k. And by the time the taxes are paid, the inheritance tax are paid, they get a check for somewhere around $35,000. That's not unusual. And that's sad. And I have sat across the table from people who have or been on Zoom or something along those lines with people who sit there and say, oh my gosh, of course I would want to do this. I would want to give this gift to my family that they have more to enjoy as well. If you like these ideas, please follow, share, do your research, look me up, look my team up. My company is Blazing Star Wealth Strategies. The website is Go Blazing Star. We are on all the socials. Look up Blazing Anything, primarily Instagram. And of course, this podcast can be found on YouTube and Spotify and all the places. I always owe a huge thank you to Caleb for his patience, especially. He's with Sal Media, does an amazing job, and being patient for me to get power today when there was a blizzard in town. So I thought moving further south wasn't going to have a blizzard, but here's my first winter here. Regardless, if you like these ideas, please share. If I ruffled your feathers, oh, please send some comments. I would love to answer. I'll put them on this podcast as well. I want you to know that you should be informed of your options. And if nothing else, if you listen to any part of this, hopefully, and I do believe very sincerely, you probably picked up on something that at least you should be curious about, no matter where your journey is at. And I hope you have a wonderful week. I will continue to drop these most every Monday, and you'll see fresh reels and videos throughout the ongoing process after that. Okay, so if you're still listening to this podcast at this stage, this is the boring stuff. This is the disclaimer. And I'm doing this because, yes, I do care about who you are and what you do with your money. And I'm going to be here to help give you some ideas. However, these are just ideas, they're theories. Sometimes these are ideas that are coming into my head based on what's going on in the world at this time, and they're not necessarily specific financial advice. I do encourage you, if you decide to do anything with your money, make any changes, seek the advice of a professional. You're welcome to follow up with me or with someone else, and make sure that what you're doing is something that fits with you, your lifestyle, your finances, and it's a strategy that's specific to you. Again, these are ideas and concepts. Do not necessarily take these as specific financial advice and follow it directly without having a full education.